We are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales.
President Joe Biden just did what everyone said he would not do: end U.S. support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Yes, he's actually pulling out of Yemen. Now, this is related to the worst humanitarian crisis ongoing right now, of course, apart from the pandemic, but that's not really a humanitarian crisis. So this absolutely is the worst humanitarian crisis in existence right now. I discussed this last week when Biden put a pause on sales to the Saudis, the arms sales to the Saudis. And I got a lot of pushback saying that, oh, this was only temporary. This was only procedural because it's a new administration. It's not going to be permanent. Well, it's permanent. No more arms sales, no more support for the war in Yemen. Now, I could fill this video with a lot of people saying, oh, Biden definitely is not going to be any different on foreign policy. Nothing is going to fundamentally change under Joe Biden. But it would take a long time for me to research all those people. And to be honest, a lot of those people I normally respect and I like their work, and they had good reason to think that Joe Biden wouldn't be any different when it came to this issue. And to be fair, I have been very critical and very skeptical of anything changing when it came to Joe Biden's foreign policy from Donald Trump or anybody else. So this is just a surprise. And it's also fair to point out here, of course, why this all began. Jeremy Scahill tweeting out, if Biden ends U.S. involvement in the Saudi genocidal campaign in Yemen, that's great. Never should have been. But never forget it was the Obama-Biden admin that started this, including key figures in Biden's cabinet. They started the fire. Now they say they will stop pouring gas on it. Very fair criticism here. The reason this is even an issue is because of the Obama-Biden administration. But at the same time, you have to acknowledge progress when it happens. And ending U.S. support in Yemen is great. Now, of course, before this, here's what actually happened. So yes, Obama, Biden, they're the reason this all started, but Trump made it much worse. NBC News here from, this is from 2018, U.S. airstrikes in Yemen have increased sixfold under Trump. So there is no denying that it got a lot worse under Donald Trump, and Trump even vetoed the measure to end U.S. involvement in the Yemen war. Bernie Sanders led this effort to end U.S. involvement in Yemen. He worked with Republicans, was able to reach across the aisle, working with both parties to get this done. It got to Trump's desk, and he vetoed it. So it only makes sense now that Biden comes in and ends the support. Now, before I get to more on that, including a clip from Joe Biden, and also a criticism as well of this potentially not going far enough, I will get to that. This from the UN. I covered this briefly last week as well, just to give you an update on what's been going on in Yemen. UN Humanitarian Office puts Yemen war dead at 233,000, mostly from indirect causes. So mostly from hunger, lack of health care, lack of infrastructure. So it includes 3,000 children, over 3,000 children who have died during this conflict. Now, we also get to here, before all this happened, as I said last week, Biden administration pauses arms sales to Saudi Arabia and UAE. When I did this video, if you go and read the comments, a lot of people were happy about it, but a lot were also very skeptical. And it's fine to be skeptical. I was skeptical in that video about this. Would this be permanent? But it's another thing to say, no, absolutely, definitely, he's going to start. He's going to reverse it. He's going to continue involvement in Yemen. He's going to continue selling arms to the Saudis. There were people who were just completely confident in not knowing what the actual outcome would be. So understand, it's perfectly fine to be skeptical based on what Joe Biden has done in the past, based on what he has supported in the past, based on what he has said in the past. It is perfectly fine to be skeptical of what he is going to do. That doesn't mean that you should just be confident that he's definitely not going to do the thing that you want him to do, because then you end up just looking stupid. So I think we can all, have an open mind now going forward, understanding that he is movable on these issues. Now, I want to get to some reaction to Biden doing this, but first of all, I want to get to his comments here about it.
We're also stepping up our diplomacy to end the war in Yemen, a war which has created a humanitarian and strategic catastrophe. I've asked my Middle East team to ensure our support for the United Nations-led initiative to impose a ceasefire open humanitarian challenge, and restore long dormant peace talks. This morning, Secretary Blinken appointed Tim Lenderking, a career foreign policy officer, as our special envoy to the Yemen conflict, and I appreciate him doing this. Tim has lifelong experience in the region, and he'll work with the UN envoy and all parties to the conflict to push for a diplomatic resolution. And Tim's diplomacy will be bolstered by USAID working to ensure that humanitarian aid is reaching the Yemeni people who are suffering unendurable devastation. This war has to end. And to underscore our commitment, we are ending all American support for offensive operations in the war in Yemen, including relevant arms sales. At the same time, Saudi Arabia faces missile attacks, UAV strikes, and other threats from Iranian-supplied forces in multiple countries. We're going to continue to support and help Saudi Arabia defend its sovereignty and its territorial integrity and its people. We also face a crisis of more than 80 million displaced people suffering all around the world.
So there you have it. Ending arms sales, ending support for the Saudis in Yemen, investing into U.S. aid, and also working through diplomacy to end this conflict. This is what a leader does. Now, yes, there are criticisms that this does not even go far enough, believe it or not, and they're fair criticisms. I will get to that in a second. First, reaction here from Medea Benjamin of Code Pink, the peace group, saying here, exciting news. POTUS will announce a halt to U.S. support for offensive operations in Yemen. Jake Sullivan says that includes an end to precision-guided munition sales, and that the U.S. will name a diplomatic envoy to end the conflict. Great news. And then reaction here from Shireen Al-Ademi, who was born in Yemen, is an expert in this field, is also a assistant professor at Michigan State University, saying here the U.S. is ending its offensive role in the war on Yemen. I'm typing this through tears that haven't stopped since Hassan al-Taib called me with this news. I don't know all the details yet, but after 6 years of anti-war advocacy, I'm hopeful. And later on, tweeted this out, Biden on ending the U.S. war in Yemen. He'll end all offensive support, including relevant arms sales, but will continue to support and defend Saudi from missile attacks. Defending Saudi is what got us into this mess. End your war, Joe Biden. Let Saudi secure its own borders. I completely agree. This does not go far enough. That said, this is clearly moving in the right direction. So you had Trump escalate the conflict, increase missiles in Yemen, increase arms sales. Now, you're having a completely different move here from Joe Biden, moving in the completely opposite direction, moving towards diplomacy, ending offensive support, ending arms sales. That's undeniably a great thing. That said, of course, yes, criticisms here that are completely fair. And one last thing here. This is Amnesty International's reaction to Biden freezing arms sales last week, but a lot of this commentary also applies to what Biden did today. Saying here, quote, President Biden's decision to freeze arms sales to Saudi Arabia and the UAE represents a welcome relief in an otherwise shameful chapter of history. Almost 6 years of conflict in Yemen, fueled by irresponsible arms transfers, have left 14 million Yemenis in dire need of humanitarian assistance. Quote, the suspension of arms sales by the U.S. is a step in the right direction and ups the pressure on European countries, most notably the UK and France, to follow suit and stop fueling the human misery in Yemen. So this is a point that I wanted to make here and why I read this. This is actually leading the world in the right direction. So moving away from offensive support in Yemen and moving towards diplomacy and leading places like the UK and France to follow suit. Canada also included in that. Canada has a $14 billion arms deal with the Saudis that they still have not ended, even though that was from a previous prime minister, a conservative prime minister, Stephen Harper, had that deal. That was his deal. Trudeau took it on, continued it, did not end it. Compare that to Joe Biden, who ended Trump's arms sales to the Saudis and clearly moving in a different direction. So here you have the U.S. leading on this front. We will see if other countries follow suit. My guess is they will, because of how powerful the U.S. is when it comes to their presence around the world. So We'll see. But obviously, look, all told, yes, while there are criticisms that this does not go far enough, clearly this is a move in the right direction. And I think has shocked a lot of people.